The Hall of Endless Gifts was bigger than anything any human had ever seen. Its walls stretched higher than the tallest mountains on earth, carved from black stone that shimmered like liquid night. Golden banners hung between the great pillars, each embroidered with symbols of dragons long gone. At the far end of the hall, sitting on a throne carved from a single crystal of deep red, was the Dragon Emperor. He was immense, with scales that glowed faintly in the dim light, eyes sharp and golden as the sun. The air around him seemed to hum with quiet power. For centuries, rulers from across the galaxy had traveled here, bearing gifts to gain favor, avoid destruction, or beg for peace. Each year, the hall filled with priceless treasures, glowing stones, precious metals, exotic animals, and technologies that could have reshaped worlds. Each year, the Emperor had ignored them all. He did not smile. He did not speak. He simply sat, his long tail coiling around the base of the throne, his gaze fixed on the crowd, and waited. On this day, the hall was fuller than usual. Merchants, kings, and ambassadors had arrived from distant planets, their robes shining, their ships docking outside the palace. They brought rare crystals that hummed like music, jewels that captured the light of distant stars, and mechanical wonders that could mimic life. Yet, as each one stepped forward, presenting their gift with trembling hands, the Emperor did not move. He did not even glance down. His silence was louder than the grandest announcements in the galaxy. A young queen from a water planet offered a liquid pearl that glowed like the heart of her oceans. A merchant prince from a desert world laid a gemstone that burned with heat, hotter than the suns of his planet. Even a historian who had traveled for 50 years brought a tiny machine capable of storing entire libraries. Every gift was met with the same quiet, unmoving stare. Courtiers whispered to each other, some shivering in fear, some shaking with frustration. Why does he not speak? Why does he not smile? They whispered, but no one dared speak loud enough for the Emperor to hear. To him these offerings were empty. They were noise. They were meaningless. At the back of the hall, small figures moved quickly. One of them stumbled into the great chamber, unnoticed by most. It was a human child, no more than 10 years old, barefoot and dusty, holding a folded piece of paper. He had not come with a caravan or a ship. He had not brought a jewel, a treasure, or a relic. He had come alone, pushed forward by accident during the chaos outside. His eyes were wide, filled with both awe and fear, as he glanced at the towering dragons that flanked the Emperor's throne. They looked like living mountains, their scales glinting in the dim light, their teeth sharp and long. The child swallowed hard, clutching his small paper closer to his chest. The guards noticed him and began to laugh. "What is this?" one said. "A child with a scrap of paper? This is not a gift." Others joined, their laughter echoing through the vast hall. Some courtiers shook their heads, embarrassed, while others scowled, worried about the Emperor's reaction. But the Emperor did not move. He did not speak. He simply watched the chaos from his high throne, his eyes narrowing just slightly as if he were aware of something that no one else could see. The child's small voice trembled. I have something for you, Your Majesty," he said. He stepped forward, his tiny hands extending the paper. The guards tried to stop him, but the Emperor raised one claw and they froze. A silence fell so deep that the clinking of the golden banners sounded like thunder. The courtiers, the merchants, the rulers, they all stopped and stared. No one had ever dared approach the Emperor like this. No one had ever dared to offer anything without riches or power. The child unfolded the paper. It was not made of rare materials, nor did it glow with strange energy. It was simple, crumpled slightly at the edges, and colored with a few weak strokes of paint. On it was a drawing. A dragon, standing tall and strong with a small human beside it. They were both under the same sky with no weapons, no chains, no gold. Just the dragon, the human, and a quiet world between them. The colors were simple, but the meaning was clear. The drawing showed a connection, a friendship, and something the Emperor had not seen in centuries. The hall was silent. The courtiers could not believe their eyes. The other rulers looked horrified, unsure whether to laugh or step back in fear. The guards were frozen, unsure if they should act. Even the merchants whispered among themselves, confused by the audacity of a child standing in front of the Dragon Emperor with nothing but a small paper. The Emperor's golden eyes flicked down to the drawing. For a long moment he said nothing. The child's hands shook, but he did not falter. He waited. And then the Emperor leaned forward slightly, the faintest motion, and spoke in a voice that rumbled like distant mountains. "Where did you learn this?" he asked. The question was quiet but powerful, carrying across the hall and silencing even the wind that slipped through the massive doors. The child looked up, blinking against the bright eyes of the Emperor. I drew it myself, he said. I wanted you to see that humans and dragons can be together. His voice was small, yet there was courage in it. I don't have gold or jewels. I just wanted you to know we care. No one moved. No one breathed. The emperor leaned back, staring at the paper as if he were seeing something long buried. Memories stirred, a faint warmth from a time before war, before isolation, before fear. A time when dragons and humans had once stood side by side, and the galaxy had not yet demanded only fear and power. The hall was frozen in a strange moment between past and present. The child waited, unsure what would happen next. He did not know if the emperor would roar, crush him, or dismiss him with a wave of his claw. But the emperor did not roar. He did not move. He did not take the paper away. For the first time in centuries he simply looked, really looked at what someone had given him, not gold, not jewels, not machines, but something from the heart. And somewhere in that vast, empty hall, the first crack in centuries of stone-cold indifference appeared. The hall remained still long after the child unfolded his drawing. The courtiers whispered, unsure what to do. Some wanted to laugh, others to flee, but no one dared move. Even the guards who had mocked the child earlier felt a strange silence settle over them. The emperor's eyes were fixed on the paper, unblinking, golden light glinting from his scales. No one had ever seen him like this, quiet, thoughtful, almost human. The child's hands trembled. He had expected anger, a roar, or the snap of claws, but none came. He took a deep breath. I drew it, because I wanted you to see that dragons and humans don't have to be enemies, he said softly. We can live together. We can care for each other. His voice was small, but it carried something stronger than any treasure in the hall, honesty. The emperor's tail shifted slightly, a low hum of movement through the stone floor. He had seen millions of tributes, thousands of weapons, hundreds of entire species bowing in fear or desperation. None of it had ever touched him. Yet this child's simple paper stirred something inside him he had not felt in centuries. Something soft, fragile, and almost forgotten. He leaned forward slightly, the massive weight of his presence pressing down on the hall. You speak of caring? He asked, his voice deep and rumbling like distant thunder. And you bring me this drawing? The words were not cruel. They were curious, almost hesitant. The courtiers froze. Even the air seemed to pause, waiting for what would happen next. Yes, the child said, trembling. I don't have gold, I don't have jewels, I don't have power. But I can draw. I can show that we can be together, not enemies. You don't have to be alone. His eyes were bright, shining with hope that he barely understood himself. Please, look at it. The emperor stared. For the first time in hundreds of years he felt a memory stir, distant and sharp. He remembered a time before conquest, before the galaxy feared him. A time when dragons had protected and shared, not ruled and destroyed. A time when small hands had reached out without fear, when trust had existed. The drawing was crude, the colors uneven, the lines shaky, but it carried a truth he had long forgotten. The child pointed at the two figures in the drawing. That's you, he said. And that's me. I don't know what we can do together yet, but I wanted you to see it. His small voice grew firmer. It's not treasure. It's not power. But it is friendship. The emperor shifted on his throne. A quiet sound, almost a sigh, left his chest. The courtiers whispered again, louder this time, but the emperor raised a claw slightly, silencing them instantly. A human speaks of friendship to me, he said. Do you even know what you are saying? His eyes softened, almost imperceptibly, and the golden glow in his scales flickered with something unusual, interest. I think I do, the child said. He straightened, feeling a courage that surprised even himself. I know you are strong. I know you are feared. But I also know you can care. You can choose. You can be more than the things everyone says you are. He looked up at the emperor, unafraid now. I want to see that side of you. I want to believe in it. The emperor leaned back, claws folding across the crystal armrest of his throne. He thought of the countless worlds he had ruled through fear. He thought of the empty years, the centuries of solitude. He thought of the moments he had crushed small beings without a second thought, believing that power was all that mattered. And for the first time he realized how hollow it had all been. The treasures, the gifts, the obedience, they had never reached him. But this small, fragile drawing had. The courtiers watched in shock. Many were afraid. Some whispered about treason, about daring to approach the emperor with nothing but a piece of paper. The merchants shifted nervously, unsure if their priceless offering still mattered. Outside, the wind seemed to pause, carrying the quiet tension of the hall. The emperor's gaze returned to the drawing. He studied it as if reading an ancient text, as if searching for meaning between the strokes of color and simple shapes. He noticed how the dragon in the picture, though drawn in childish lines, stood tall and strong, yet did not seem threatening. He noticed how the human beside the dragon looked small, yet confident. The child had captured something important: strength paired with understanding, power paired with compassion. Finally the emperor spoke again, slower this time. "No one has offered me such a thing in centuries," he said. His voice was softer, almost private, though the hall still trembled with its low rumble. "No jewels, no weapons, no treasures. Only this." He gestured slightly to the paper. "It is simple, yet it carries truth." The child nodded. "Yes, it is all I can give. But it is enough if you choose to see it." A moment passed, thick and heavy, stretching across the hall. Then the emperor leaned forward again, his massive eyes meeting the child's small, earnest ones. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "there is more in the galaxy than I thought. Perhaps." His words trailed off. The thought was dangerous, daring, almost reckless. He had not dared to believe in such things for centuries. The child's heart beat fast. He did not know what had come over the emperor, only that the massive being before him seemed different. Softer somehow. Less distant. He dared a small smile. "I hope you will let it grow," he said. "I hope you will see that caring is stronger than fear. That friendship is stronger than gold." The emperor's gaze lingered on the drawing. For a long, quiet moment he said nothing. Then he made a small, deliberate movement, one that no one in the hall had seen in centuries. He reached out, not to destroy, not to dismiss, but to touch the paper as if acknowledging its power. The courtiers gasped. The guards froze. The child felt a warmth spread through his chest. The emperor had accepted the gift. Not because it was valuable, not because it was rare, but because it spoke to something deep inside him, a side of himself even he had forgotten existed. In that silence, the first spark of change began. The emperor, feared across galaxies, had paused. He had listened. And he had felt. The hall stayed quiet, though the courtiers were restless. The emperor still held the small drawing in his massive claw. His golden eyes traced the simple lines again, and something deep inside stirred. It was not anger. It was not curiosity. It was memory. A memory he had buried long ago behind layers of fear, conquest, and endless rule. He remembered a time before the galaxy feared him, before isolation had made him cold. Once, a fragile species had lived among dragons and humans alike. They were small, weak, and gentle, and the emperor had protected them. He had given them warmth, safety, and guidance. He had even let a small human child play among them. The dragons had grown strong, the humans had learned courage, and together they had lived in a kind of peace that now seemed impossible. But the galaxy had not understood. Fearful races had attacked, jealous rulers had plotted, and the fragile species had been destroyed. The emperor had watched helplessly, unable to save them all. That loss had been the first stone on the wall he built around his heart. He had chosen power over kindness, conquest over care, and the galaxy had learned to fear him. Since that day he had refused every tribute, ignored every gesture, and closed himself off from feeling. Yet the child's drawing, so simple, so honest, brought back that memory. It reminded him of a truth he had almost forgotten. Dragons were not meant to be alone. Humans were not meant to be enemies. And yet centuries of fear and war had hidden that truth from him. The child waited quietly, his small hands clasped in front of him. He did not try to speak, for he had learned that silence could sometimes hold more power than words. The emperor looked at him again, really looked, and the child saw a flicker in the golden eyes, a glimmer of something the galaxy had not witnessed in hundreds of years: vulnerability. "You remind me of someone," the emperor said softly, his voice low and almost unsure. "A long time ago, a child, small like you, who brought hope into a world that had none. That child trusted me, believed in me, even when the galaxy had already turned its back. And I failed." His claw pressed the drawing gently against his chest, as if it could hold what he had lost. "I failed them all." The child's eyes widened. He did not fully understand the words, but he felt the weight behind them. He stepped forward slightly. "You don't have to fail anymore," he said quietly. "You can still care. You can still choose." His voice was steady, though his hands shook. "You don't have to be alone." The emperor's tail shifted slowly, a low hum through the stone floor. No one else moved. The courtiers whispered, but no one dared interrupt. The hall felt as if it were holding its breath, waiting for what would come next. "Care," the emperor repeated, tasting the word. I have not in centuries. I have not let myself feel it. I have only taken, demanded, ruled. He paused. And yet this paper, this human, shows me that I could still give, still be more than what I have become. His golden eyes softened. The scales along his jaw shimmered, reflecting a light that no one in the hall had seen before. The child nodded, encouraging without words. He had no fear. He only believed that even the strongest being in the galaxy could have a heart. It's not too late, he said. You can still change. You don't have to follow what everyone expects of you. The Emperor leaned back, lost in thought. He remembered the faces of the fragile species he had once protected, the humans who had trusted him, the laughter of a child he could never forget. Pain rose, but it was not the same pain he had felt before. It was sharper, deeper, but it also carried clarity. He had been alone, but not because he had wanted to be. He had built walls to survive the galaxy, and now the walls seemed empty and cold. Why does a human child dare speak to me like this? The Emperor murmured. Why do you not fear? The child's voice was small but firm. Because I believe you can be better than fear. I believe you can care even if no one else does. That's why I came. The Emperor studied him for a long time. No one in the hall had ever dared to speak to him without trembling. No one had ever offered something so small yet so honest. He realized that the drawing was not just a picture, it was a mirror. It showed him what he had lost, what he had ignored, and what he could still protect. Finally he spoke again, his voice quiet but filled with weight. You have reminded me of a time I thought I would never see again. A time when dragons and humans were not enemies. A time when hope was not forgotten. Your courage, it reaches farther than any treasure, any gift, any tribute I have ever received. The child's heart beat fast. For the first time he felt that his small actions had meaning. He had not come to change the galaxy. He had not come to win praise. He had only come to show something true, and it had touched the most powerful being in the stars. The Emperor lowered his massive head slightly, so close to the child that the warm golden light of his eyes fell over him. You are small, yet you carry more than anyone else here, he said. You have reminded me of something I thought I had lost. Perhaps the galaxy is not as empty as I believed. The courtiers watched in awe. The merchants and rulers felt a mixture of fear and astonishment. None of them had expected this. None of them had dared approach the Emperor with a piece of paper, let alone speak truth to him. Yet here he was, listening, reflecting, almost human. The child smiled slightly. You can still choose, he said again. You don't have to be what everyone fears. You can be what you want to be. The Emperor nodded slowly. He had no words yet, only thought. But for the first time in centuries he did not feel alone. He had been reminded that care, courage, and honesty mattered more than any tribute, more than any conquest. And that reminder, from the smallest human in the galaxy, was more powerful than anything he had ever known. In that quiet hall, surrounded by treasures that no longer mattered, the Emperor held the drawing close. For the first time in centuries he felt the warmth of something long lost. And deep inside he knew that change, though dangerous and uncertain, had begun. The Emperor did not return the child to the hall at once. Instead he ordered the doors closed and the courtiers dismissed. The hum of the great building quieted, and even the guards moved away, unsure what their ruler was planning. The child remained standing before the throne, holding his simple drawing, feeling nervous yet strangely calm. For the first time he was not afraid of the Emperor's size, or his golden eyes, or the centuries of fear that surrounded him. The Emperor was listening, truly listening. The Emperor leaned forward, claws resting on the arm of his throne. You have reminded me of what I once protected, he said. Of what I could still protect. The galaxy has shaped itself through fear for too long. That ends now. He paused as if weighing his words carefully, the sound of his tail brushing across the stone floor echoing like thunder. I will no longer accept tributes. I will no longer rule by fear. Those who wish for peace must show it through understanding, not through gold or weapons. The child blinked. But, will they listen? He asked. His small voice carried curiosity and concern. Most people only understand power. The Emperor's golden eyes flickered with a strange light. Then they will learn, he said. They will learn what it means to face a dragon not with fear but with honesty. If they cannot, they will be shown their limits. His voice carried authority but not the old cruelty. It carried something new, purpose. Word traveled fast through the galaxy. Traders and rulers who had come with gifts for centuries were shocked when their ships returned empty. Messengers spread the word. The Dragon Emperor no longer demanded tributes. Instead he asked for understanding, kindness, and honesty. Many laughed. Many scoffed. Some dared to challenge him. But the emperor did not act in anger. He observed, testing the truth of their actions rather than the power of their armies. The child watched quietly as the first emissaries approached him, uncertain, curious, even afraid. "You must speak for yourself," the emperor said softly, glancing at the small human. "You have already shown me what honesty and courage can do." The child swallowed hard, realizing the emperor had given him a voice, a responsibility. He nodded, determined. "I will," he said. As the days passed, creatures from across the galaxy came to the emperor's hall. Some brought nothing but words, sharing stories of their lives, their hopes, their struggles. Others tried to deceive, to trick the emperor into believing in their kindness. But he could see the truth as clearly as the child had seen his own power. The galaxy began to realize that the emperor had changed, that fear alone would no longer sway him. The emperor also began teaching the child, quietly showing him the history of dragons, the losses of species long gone, and the choices that had shaped entire planets. The child listened, asking questions, offering ideas, and sometimes just sitting quietly, letting the emperor remember what it felt like to care without expectation. Each day the emperor learned something he had forgotten. The small human reminded him that strength was not in conquest, but in understanding. Some rulers tried to challenge this new order. They sent fleets, powerful weapons, and threats. But the emperor did not attack in rage. Instead he approached each challenge with calm, showing them the choice they had: meet him with honesty or face the truth of their actions. Many were surprised to find that fear was no longer the most effective tool. Diplomacy, compassion, and courage began to carry weight that weapons never had. The child watched as the galaxy began to shift. He did not fully understand the enormity of what was happening, but he felt it in the way creatures spoke, in the way armies hesitated, and in the way the emperor's massive form moved through the hall. The drawing he had made, small, simple, human-made, had begun to change the course of the stars. One day a council of rulers arrived, expecting to negotiate through fear as they had for centuries. They were met with silence at first. The emperor regarded them, and then, slowly, he unfolded the child's drawing and placed it on the table before them. "This is what I choose," he said. "Not gold. Not tribute. Not fear. Understanding. Honesty. Courage. If you cannot offer these, then you will learn their value the hard way." The rulers were stunned. None had ever faced the emperor like this. None had ever seen him act without cruelty or pride. Some realized the truth in his words, and slowly they began to speak openly, honestly, without hidden agendas. Others faltered, unsure how to respond. The child's hand shook slightly as he watched, but he felt pride. He had not imagined that his simple drawing could influence the galaxy, yet here it was, changing minds and hearts. The emperor did not stop there. He sent messages across the stars, inviting other planets to show understanding, to prove that cooperation was stronger than fear. Those who succeeded were welcomed. Those who failed were left to consider their choices, not destroyed, not humiliated, but given the chance to reflect. It was a new kind of power, one that no one in the galaxy had expected. The halls of the palace, once filled with endless treasures, now echoed with voices of discussion, debate, and learning. The emperor listened, guided by the child's presence, and for the first time in centuries he felt a quiet joy. Not the joy of conquest, not the joy of fear, but the joy of seeing life, understanding, and courage flourish. The child realized that the emperor had begun to change not because of threats or gifts, but because someone had dared to care. That simple human act, holding a drawing, speaking truth, offering hope, had given the emperor a path back to something he thought he had lost forever. And as the stars shifted in response to this new order, the child understood something profound. Even the smallest human can spark change that echoes across the galaxy. In the silence of the palace, the emperor placed the drawing beside his throne, where it could always be seen. It was no longer just a piece of paper. It was a symbol, a reminder that choice, honesty, and courage could shape the future. And through that symbol, the galaxy began to learn a new truth, that strength was not in fear or destruction, but in the power to understand and to care. The emperor glanced at the child and nodded slightly. No words were needed. The choice had been made. The galaxy had begun to feel the ripple of that choice. And for the first time, the stars themselves seemed to watch with hope. The galaxy began to notice the change long before anyone could name it. Ships that had once arrived with weapons or treasure now arrived empty-handed, carrying only words, hopes, and questions. Diplomats and rulers from hundreds of worlds came to the Dragon Emperor's hall, unsure what to expect, yet compelled to understand. They found something they had never imagined. A dragon who listened, who remembered, who cared. The child stood beside the emperor, watching the visitors come and go. He had grown taller, but his small hand still held the original drawing, now slightly faded and worn at the edges. It was no longer just a piece of paper. It was a symbol of courage, honesty, and the quiet power of one human voice. The emperor often glanced at it, sometimes holding it close to his chest as he thought. Some rulers tried to deceive, hoping the emperor's change was only weakness. But the emperor no longer needed fear to see the truth. He could sense honesty, sincerity, and intent, just as he had sensed it in the child long ago. Those who tried to lie found doors closing, not with anger but with quiet justice. Those who approached with truth and respect were welcomed. Slowly, the galaxy began to understand what it meant to be valued for who they were, not what they could give. The child realized that the emperor had changed because someone had dared to care. That small act of offering a drawing had shown the galaxy a truth it had long ignored, that power alone was hollow and kindness alone could move mountains. The dragons themselves noticed the difference. Once proud and distant, they began to shift their behavior, learning from the emperor's example. They no longer demanded obedience or fear. They began to protect, to listen, to teach. Word spread to the stars, carried by travelers and messengers. The galaxy began to call it the soft turning, though it was more than soft. It was profound, invisible, yet unstoppable. Humans who had once been considered small and weak, were now seen as brave and wise. Their courage had changed the path of the galaxy, not with armies or weapons but with honesty, care, and persistence. The emperor held council one evening with leaders from several worlds. He did not sit on his throne, for he no longer wished to separate himself from those he ruled. Instead, he sat on a low platform, his tail curled gently behind him, the drawing before him. The leaders looked uneasy. They had never addressed a dragon without fear. But they were learning, slowly, to trust that honesty could carry as much weight as fear once had. A young human ambassador stepped forward. "Your Majesty," she said, "we never understood what we could do before. We thought we needed treasure, gifts, or armies to matter. But now, we see that courage and truth are stronger than any weapon." The emperor's golden eyes softened. "Yes," he said. "And that lesson was taught by one human child, who reminded me that even the smallest voice can change the course of stars." He gestured toward the drawing. This was more powerful than any tribute or treasure, because it carried honesty and hope. That is something no galaxy can take from us. The leaders looked at each other, realizing the weight of his words. They began to understand that strength was not about domination, but about respect and courage. They began to speak openly, honestly, and without the usual tricks of fear or deceit. And in that honesty, a new alliance of understanding began to form, stronger than any treaty signed in gold or blood. The child smiled, feeling proud and humble at the same time. He had not sought praise. He had not sought power. He had only acted with care, offering something simple from his heart. Yet that simplicity had changed the galaxy. He realized that humanity had given more than anyone knew. Not armies, not gold, not weapons, but the courage to care, the strength to be honest, and the hope that even the greatest can be reminded of their better self. The emperor often visited the child quietly, speaking softly of past mistakes, lost species, and memories he could now face without pain. He taught the child about dragons, about history, about choices that could shape entire worlds. And the child listened, learning that caring could change even the strongest hearts, that hope could be a weapon more powerful than fire, and that courage could ripple across the galaxy in ways no one expected. Over time, the emperor's court became a place of learning and discussion, not fear and tribute. Creatures of all sizes and kinds traveled to share knowledge, art, and ideas. Wars ceased before they could begin, simply because those who had once relied on fear now saw that honesty, courage, and kindness mattered more. Entire civilizations began to flourish in ways they had never dared to imagine, guided by the emperor's quiet example and the small human who had reminded him of what it meant to care. One night, as the stars shone across the hall, the emperor held the drawing and looked at it closely. "This human," he said softly, "gave me what no treasure could, the reminder that even I can choose compassion over fear. Even I can change. And the galaxy will change with me." The child, now standing taller and stronger than when he first entered the hall, smiled. He had never imagined that a simple drawing could hold so much power. He realized that humanity had given the galaxy something priceless: the courage to care, the wisdom to be honest, and the hope that even the strongest beings could choose a better path. And somewhere across the stars, civilizations whispered of a dragon emperor who had stopped ruling by fear, of humans who had shown what courage and truth could do, and of a small drawing that had changed everything. The emperor placed the drawing beside his throne, where it would remain forever. It was no longer just a piece of paper. It was a symbol of what humanity had given the galaxy without knowing it: hope, courage, and the reminder that even the greatest power is nothing without the choice to care. In that quiet hall, under the light of 1,000 stars, the galaxy felt different. It was not stronger because of weapons or gold. It was stronger because a human had dared to care, and in doing so had reminded the stars themselves what strength truly meant.